outrage at Germany's use of poison gas at Ypres and responded by developing their own gas warfare capability. The commander of 2 Corps, Lieutenant General Sir Charles Ferguson, said of gas, "It is a cowardly form of warfare which does not commend itself to me or other English soldiers. We cannot win this war unless we kill or incapacitate more of our enemies than they do of us, and if this can only be done by our copying the enemy in his choice of weapons, we must not refuse to do so." 28. The first use of gas by the British was at the Battle of Loos, the 25th of September, 1915, but the attempt was a disaster. Chlorine, codenamed Red Star, was the agent to be used. 140 tons arrayed in 5,100 cylinders, and the attack was dependent on a favorable wind. On this occasion the wind proved fickle, and the gas either lingered in no man's land or, in places, blew back on the British trenches. 8. This was compounded when gas could not be released from all the British canisters because the wrong turning keys were sent with tin. Subsequent retaliatory German shelling hit some of those unused full cylinders, releasing gas amongst British troops. 29. Exacerbating the situation were the primitive flannel gas masks distributed to the British. The masks got hot, and the small eyepieces misted over, reducing visibility. Some of the troops lifted the masks to get fresh air, causing them to be gassed. 30. British infantry advancing through gas at Loos, the 25th of September, 1915. British infantry advancing through gas at Loos, the 25th of September, 1915. Football team of British soldiers with gas masks, Western Front, 1916. Football team of British soldiers with gas masks, Western Front, 1916. A British gas bomb from 1915. A British gas bomb from 1915. 1915, more deadly gases. Microscopic section of human lung from phosgene shell poisoning from an atlas of gas poisoning. 1918, the deficiencies of chlorine were overcome with the introduction of phosgene, which was prepared by a group of French chemists led by Victor Grignard and first used by France in 1915. 31. Colorlescent, having an odor likened to moldy hay. Phosgene was difficult to detect, making it a more effective weapon. Phosgene was sometimes used on its own, but was more often used mixed with an equal volume of chlorine, with the chlorine helping to spread the denser phosgene. 32. The Allies called this combination White Star after the marking painted on shells containing the mixture. 33. Phosgene was a potent killing agent, deadlier than chlorine. It had a potential drawback in that some of the symptoms of exposure took 24 hours or more to manifest. This meant that the victims were initially still capable of putting up a fight. This could also mean that apparently fit troops would be incapacitated by the effects of the gas in the following day. 34. In the first combined chlorine-phosgene attack by Germany against British troops at Wieltje near Ypres, Belgium on the 19th of December, 1915, 88 tons of the gas were released from cylinders, causing 1,069 casualties and 69 deaths. 32. The British P-gas helmet, issued at the time, was impregnated with sodium phenolate and partially effective against phosgene. The modified pH gas helmet, which was impregnated with phenatehexamine and hexamethylene tetramine, urotropine, to improve the protection against phosgene, was issued in January 1916. 32, 35, 36. Around 36,600 tons of phosgene were manufactured during the war, out of a total of 190,000 tons for all chemical weapons, making it second only to chlorine, 93,800 tons, in the quantity manufactured. Sad Smiley 37, Germany 18,100 tons. France 15,700 tons. United Kingdom 1,400 tons, also used French stocks. United States 1,400 tons, also used French stocks. Phosgene was never as notorious in public consciousness as mustard gas, but it killed far more people, about 85% of the 90,000 deaths caused by chemical weapons during World War I. 1916, Austrian use. Italian dead after the Austrian gas attack on Monte San Michele on the 29th of June, 1916. The Austro-Hungarian army attacked the Royal Italian Army's lines on Monte San Michele with a mix of phosgene and chlorine gas. 38. Thousands of Italian soldiers died in this first chemical weapons attack on the Italian front. 1917. Mustard gas. Microscopic section of human lung from mustard gas poisoning from an atlas of gas poisoning. 1918. The most widely reported chemical agent of the First World War was mustard gas. Despite the name, it is not a gas but a volatile oily liquid, and is dispersed as a fine mist of liquid droplets. 39. It was introduced as a vesicant by Germany on the 12th of July, 1917. Weeks prior to the Third Battle of Ypres. 8:40. The Germans marked their shells ILAU for mustard gas and green for chlorine and phosgene, hence Effie called the new gas Yellow Cross. It was known to the British as HS, Hun stuff, and the French called it Yperite, named after Ypres. 41. A Canadian soldier with mustard gas burns. 1917/1918. Mustard gas is not an effective killing agent, though in high doses it is fatal, but can burst to harass and disable the enemy and pollute the battlefield. Delivered in artillery shells, mustard gas was heavier than air, and it settled to the ground as an oily liquid. Once in the soil, mustard gas remained active for several days, weeks, or even months, depending on the weather conditions. 42. The skin of victims of mustard gas blistered, their eyes became very sore and they began to vomit. Mustard gas caused internal and external bleeding and attacked the bronchial tubes, stripping off the mucous membrane. This was extremely painful. Fatally injured victims sometimes took 4 or 5 weeks to die of mustard gas exposure. 43. One nurse, Vera Brittain, wrote, "I wish those people who talk about going on with this war whatever it costs could see the soldiers suffering from mustard gas poisoning. Great mustard-colored blisters, blindies, all sticky and stuck together, always fighting for breath, with voices a mere whisper, saying that their throats are closing and they know they will choke." 44. The polluting nature of mustard gas meant that it was not always suitable for supporting an attack, as the assaulting infantry would be exposed to the gas when they advanced. When Germany launched Operation Michael on the 21st of March, 1918, they saturated the Flesquières salient with mustard gas instead of attacking it directly, believing that the harassing effect of the gas, coupled with threats to the salient's flanks, would make the British position untenable. 45. Gas never reproduced the dramatic success of the 22nd of April, 1915. It became a standard weapon which, combined with conventional artillery, was used to support most attacks in the later stages of the war. Gas was employed primarily on the Western Front. The static, confined trench system was ideal for achieving an effective concentration. Germany also used gas against Russia on the Eastern Front, where the lack of effective countermeasures resulted in deaths of over 56,000 Russians. 46. While Britain experimented with gas in Palestine during the Second Battle of Gaza. 47. Russia began manufacturing chlorine gas in 1916, with phosgene being produced later in the year. Most of the manufactured gas was never used. 22. Australian gunners of the 55th Siege Battery working during a gas attack 1917. The British Army first used mustard gas in November 1917 at Cambrai, after their armies had captured a stockpile of German mustard gas shells. It took the British more than a year to develop their own mustard gas weapon, with production of the chemical centered on Avonmouth docks. 48-49. The only option available to the British was the Desprez Nyamanga 3 process. This was used first in September 1918 during the breaking of the Hindenburg Line with the 100 Days Offensive. The Allies mounted more gas attacks than the Germans in 1917 and 1918 because of a marked increase in production of gas from the Allied nations. Germany was unable to keep up with this pace despite creating various new gases for use in battle, mostly as a sort of very costly methods of production. Entry into the war with the United States allowed the Allies to increase mustard gas production far more than Germany. 50-51. Also, prevailing wind on the Western Front was blowing from west to east. 52, which meant the Allies more frequently had favorable conditions for a gas release than did the Germans. When the United States entered the war, it was already mobilizing resources from academic, industry and military sectors for research and development into poison gas. A subcommittee on noxious gases was created by the National Research Committee. A major research center was established at Camp American University, and the 1st Gas Regiment was recruited. 51. The 1st Gas Regiment eventually served in France, where it used phosgene gas in several attacks. 53-51. The artillery used mustard gas with significant effects during the Meuse-Argonne offensive on at least 3 occasions. 54. The United States began large-scale production of an improved vesicant gas known as Luizet, for use in an offensive planned for early 1919. By the time of the armistice on the 11th of November, a plant near Willoughby, Ohio was producing 10 tons per day of the substance, for a total of about 150 tons. It is uncertain what effect this new chemical would have had on the battlefield, as it degrades in moist conditions. 55-56. Post-war. By the end of the war, chemical weapons had lost much of their effectiveness against well-trained and equipped troops. By that time, chemical weapon agents had inflicted an estimated 1.3 million casualties. 57. Nevertheless, in the following years, chemical weapons were used in several, mainly colonial, wars where one side had an advantage in equipment over the other. The British used poison gas, possibly Adamsite, against Russian revolutionary troops beginning on the 27th of August 1919, 58. And contemplated using chemical weapons against Iraqi insurgents in the 1920s. Bolshevik troops used poison gas to suppress the Tambov rebellion in 1920. Spain used chemical weapons in Morocco against Rif tribesmen throughout the 1920s. 59. And Italy used mustard gas in Libya in 1930 and again during its invasion of Ethiopia in 1936. 60. In 1925, a Chinese warlord, Jiang Zuolin, contracted a German company to build him a mustard gas plant in Shenyang. 59, which was completed in 1927. Public opinion had by then turned against the use of such weapons, which led to the Geneva Protocol, an updated and extensive prohibition of poison weapons. The protocol, which was signed by most First World War combatants in 1925, bans the use, but not the stockpiling, of lethal gas and bacteriological weapons. Most countries that signed ratified it within around 5 years. A few took much longer. Brazil, Japan, Uruguay, and the United States did not do so until the 1970s, and Nicaragua ratified it in 1990. 61. The signatory nations agreed not to use poison gas in the future, stating the use in war of asphyxiating poisonous or other gases, and of all analogous liquids, materials or devices, has been justly condemned by general opinion of the civilized world. 62. Chemical weapons have been used in at least a dozen wars since the end of the First World War. Winking sad smiley. 60. They were not used in combat on a large scale until Iraq used mustard gas and the more deadly nerve agents in the Halabja chemical attack near the end of the 8-year Iran-Iraq War. The full conflict's use of such weaponry killed around 20,000 Iranian troops, and injured another 80,000, around a quarter of the number of deaths caused by chemical weapons during the First World War. 63. The Geneva Protocol, 1925,